Welcome on into the Wolverine TV. I am Clayton Sayfie with EJ Holland. We're brought to you by Lewis Jewelers. EJ, recruiting is completely ramped up here in the month of June, coming off a 15th month dead period due to the coronavirus. And we are going to talk about the 5 most important visitors on campus this weekend. Obviously include some pretty big names. But make sure everybody to go to thewolverine.com right now. Follow all of our premium coverage. You can use the promo code BLUE60 for 60 days absolutely free. And we will have full coverage on all those official visitors, interviews, insider nuggets, all of that over at thewolverine.com. You can also order our Michigan football preview magazine, 160 pages, exclusive interviews with coaches and players that you won't see anywhere else. That's also at the front page at thewolverine.com. Just click the top banner to order. EJ, let's talk some visitors. One of them unofficial, and then we'll get to 4 big official visitors. But obviously Will Johnson, the 5-star corner out of Grosse Pointe, Michigan. He is committed to the Wolverines. He is going to be on campus this weekend. And, we've kind of talked about him obviously quite a bit, but specifically in the context of Will's a very good recruiter himself. He's been working on guys trying to get them to come to Michigan, but now Mo Linguist is gone. Steve Clinkscale's coming in, who Will likes. But he's also going to look around a little bit. He's heading out to USC next week for an official visit. So it gets a little bit different here, but at the same time, I think Michigan fans should be pretty happy that Will is continuing to come to campus. He'll be, he was there last week. He's going to be there this weekend. His official visit is on June 18th, I believe. So he is going to, still be trying to recruit guys for Michigan. I think that can kind of help people sleep a little bit easier at night.
Yeah, obviously Will's an important visitor just because, he is going to see USC. So this gives Michigan yet another opportunity to get him on campus this summer, get him around recruits, get him to start feeling like the leader of the class again. Not that he's not, but just, I think it's just been a little bit of a different vibe since since Mo Linguist left Michigan. But, he visited for Detroit Day last week. So this will be his second unofficial visit to Michigan. He's coming back for an official visit to Michigan on June 18th. USC will be kind of sandwiched in between that. So USC is still a legitimate threat. It'll be interesting to see how his trip goes to Los Angeles. But obviously, like you said, it's great to get him on campus and just keep getting him on campus and keep reinforcing that he's the guy and that they're going to surround him with more talent in this class. And that's a big thing for Will. Will's always told me that he wants to be part of a great class, that he wanted to play around other, highly touted players or guys that he thought were really good. Will, a lot of people don't know that Will spends a lot of time, watching film and looking at guys and seeing, making his own neat little evaluation. So Miles Pollard's a guy that he really likes, who we'll talk about here in a second, 4-star cornerback. And I know that he's a prospect that Will was working on when Linguist was here and has continued to work on now that Steve Clinkscale is here. So they're going to spend a lot of time together this weekend. And Miles is primarily the reason that Will is making an unofficial visit to Michigan. He's going to try to show Miles a great time, which again, like you said, is a positive for Michigan, that Will's still, recruiting for the Wolverines.
Yeah, and you mentioned Miles Pollard. He's obviously the next guy on this list, so let's get into him. And, it's interesting because let's say, Miles Pollard does, someday commit to Michigan or whatever. That's going to even, help Michigan's chances even more to hang on to Will Johnson, as you kind of alluded to there. But this is a kid who took took a self-guided tour back in March to Michigan, was able to kind of see the campus, look at the facilities from the outside and all that, just like all those kids were doing. But it's big to have him, have come up from Tennessee to do that already. Now he's going to be able to be in the facilities. He's getting his trip paid for, obviously, being an official visit, meet with the staff in person, go over film with some of the staff, see the big house from the inside, walk on the field, all of that, all the pageantry of an official visit. He's finally going to get that. Huge to have him for many reasons, one of them being the fact, like I said, to help hold on to Will Johnson. Your thoughts going in on here on Miles Pollard coming into this visit?
Yeah, so with Miles, I think Michigan jumped into the lead after that self-guided tour in March. Since then, Oklahoma has continued to make a strong run at him. Auburn has also jumped in the mix since then and really made its push. And so those are the two main schools that are competing with Michigan. I think when Linguist left, Miles was pretty disappointed since he had Michigan in that lead and had a lot of group Zoom calls with Will Johnson. But the hiring of Steve Clinkscale just completely eased his concerns. Clink was his primary recruiter at Kentucky. Kentucky was actually in his top group, so he has a great relationship, a great pre-existing relationship with Clink. So no drop off there. I think Michigan might still be in the pole position heading into the visit, and they have a chance, to really impress and maybe close the door with Pollard before he makes some of these other visits. Like I just mentioned, he's good friends with Will Johnson. They hung out the last time Miles was in town, so I still feel really good about where Michigan stands with Pollard, and he's been the number one cornerback target on the board for several months.
Yep, definitely going to be important to wow him, and it helps that Will be also in those facilities with him on the visit. Again, Will on his unofficial visit, Miles Pollard taking his official visit. Also taking his official visit, not Will Johnson, but Nate Johnson out of Clovis, California, 3-star dual threat quarterback, which kind of, EJ, you were out in Los Angeles watching him at Elite 11 regionals. He got his invite to the Elite 11 finals, impressed a lot of people. This kid also runs a 10.5 100 meter, super fast, is drawing comparisons to Denard Robinson. Probably, too much expectation, but at the same time, we're talking about physical tools here. Michigan using Lamar Jackson, the fact that they have experience with him. Matt Weiss, Michigan's quarterback coach, obviously worked with him in Baltimore. They're kind of using that as a pitch, which would be an awesome thing to hear if you're a dual threat quarterback. You have recently, especially since the LA trip, become a little more optimistic on Nate Johnson in terms of what he can do at the next level. Also seems like Michigan's kind of gone all in on him, although they have offered a couple more quarterbacks here and added a couple guys to the board. Where do you think that things stand right now with Nate Johnson?
So with Nate, I think right now Michigan and Utah are at the top of his list. UCLA has kind of turned up the heat, so that could change the dynamics of his recruitment. It's imperative for Michigan to make a huge impression. I think Utah did the same last weekend. I think Utah, and Nate said it on the record, Utah pulled even with Michigan. But again, UCLA is another school to watch, so we'll see, how hard they pushed it for Nate and how much Nate's stock goes up after his impressive Elite 11 performance. He was a guy that was considered more of a project guy with that 10.5 100 meter speed that had position flexibility. And now I think he might turn into one of the more recruited dual threat quarterbacks in the country. If he impresses again at the Elite 11 finals here in a few weeks, then we might be talking about a completely different recruitment. As it stands right now, Michigan has done a really good job with him. Matt Weiss and Jim Harbaugh have been on him for several months. Courtney Morgan actually recruited him at Fresno State, so he's just excited to get his first look at Michigan. He's a kid that's not afraid to go far away from home. He really made that clear in our interview. He said, the biggest things for him is just meeting Harbaugh and Weiss in person, getting a better feel for the environment in Ann Arbor, and just hanging out with some of the players and commits and seeing what the vibe is like and if he can fit in from a culture perspective. Utah obviously isn't California, but it's still a Pac-12 school. It's still a little closer to home. He's still more familiar with it. I think he does like Michigan better overall from an overall standpoint, but just has to get a better feel for it, and that will happen this weekend.
Definitely, that's going to be huge, and it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what where things go in terms of the quarterback recruiting, where Nate Johnson's recruitment goes. As you said, it's starting to blow up a little bit, especially after last weekend at the Elite 11. Next guy on the list for us, Jeremy Patton, a 3-star athlete out of Texas. He will be up for his official visit. What are your thoughts on him and where things stand?
Yeah, so Patton's a guy that we talked about on this channel when I made my swing through East Texas a couple of months ago. At the time, I said that Michigan had a pretty decent chance at landing him because he is a high academic kid. He is from a very tiny town in Texas, and he is looking to broaden his horizons. I think the University of Texas has the lead coming out of his official visit in Austin last weekend. But again, like Nate Johnson, he's a kid that is willing to leave. The fact that he's making an official visit to Michigan speaks volumes. This is also a kid that has been really rising up the priority board. He is a top, we haven't talked about him a ton recently, but he is quickly becoming a top tier linebacker target. I know that George Hilo and Mike McDonald really, really value him and have been in constant contact. He is a little raw. Like I said, he plays at the smallest level of Texas high school football, but he's a hell of an athlete, great track athlete too, has good size, good length. So they're really, really intrigued by him, and they're excited to get him up for an official visit to Ann Arbor. I think Texas is going to be a little tough to beat since it's the home state school, but I do feel like Michigan has a puncher's chance here.
Last guy that we have listed here, Beau Atkinson, a 4-star defensive end out of North Carolina, Rivals 250 guy, ranked number 234th in the country, 6'6", 240 pounds, a big kid, long kid, it looks like. Your thoughts on him, the fact that he's coming up here to Michigan, and the fact that he'll have some FaceTime with the coaching staff as well?
Beau Atkinson's a really interesting prospect. He did make a nice jump in the rankings, going from a low 4-star to a top 250 kid nationally. I think Michigan has a legitimate chance with him. I would say the Wolverines are probably in his top 3 going into the visit and have a chance to kind of separate themselves depending on how the trip goes. He's an interesting prospect in the sense that his primary recruiter has been Ryan Osborne, new defensive analyst who is handling edge rushers to kind of take a little bit of the load off Sean Nua, who is defensive line coach, who is focusing in on defensive tackles. But at the same time, Nua has been a little involved with Atkinson as well because he's a guy that can play with his hand in the dirt. They've compared him to Aiden Hutchinson that really, really like him and are making him a priority. So Atkinson is a prospect that's rising in the rankings, rising up the priority board, and is, again, one of the most important official visitors coming into Ann Arbor this weekend.
There you have it. Those are the 5 most important visitors headed to Ann Arbor this weekend, and should be interesting. And then you got Victor's weekend, the next weekend of the 18th, which will be even more high-profile type recruits heading into Ann Arbor. For all that coverage, head to thewolverine.com. Again, that promo code is BLUE60 for 60 days, absolutely free. Also order our Michigan Football Preview magazine, 160 pages, which prints this week. So you can pre-order that at a discount right now. Head to thewolverine.com. Click the banner at the top to order, and we'll see you next time.